Well, there are some people that have had a huge influence on my Tesla world life over the last 3 or 4 years, even influencing me to become a YouTuber. And one of those is my guest today, Warren Redlich. Hey, Warren, glad to have you back on. I can't begin to tell you. So
Magic.
I used to spend every Sunday afternoon with you, and for
Yeah.
a long time. And that is certainly was a big piece of how I got totally involved in the Tesla world. So I want to start out today. By the way, this is Randy Kirk. If you like having Warren on my channel, having him show up from time to time, please hit the like button so that I hear that he get to see that, and then do all the rest of the stuff. Follow Warren, follow him on his channel, follow him on Twitter. We'll put all that information below. Follow both of us in terms of our Patreon. Anyway, let's get right into it. So this is going to be a huge week. There are one thing we know is going to happen and one thing we hope is going to happen. I want to know which is more important to you, the earnings call or the Starship launch.
Starship launch, not even close.
And I'm not as big a space fan as you are, but I have to agree. If Starship goes off, that'll be the biggest event of the month or the year.
I actually don't think the earnings call is that big of a deal. I think we're going to hear, what the revenue numbers were. We're going to be able to figure out what the average selling price is. We're going to see the profit numbers. I don't think there's going to be a lot of new information in the earnings call other than short-term stuff that people care about. We're not going to hear okay, bot's ready. We're not going to get okay, we're launching Robotaxi. We're not going to get any of that. It's going to be some number stuff, and there'll be some questions, and there'll be some answer. They don't really give great answers to the questions anymore. They seem to have gotten back away from that, and the questions aren't always that good. So it's fun to watch. It gets the short-termers excited, but long-term, does it change anything? No. I think Investor Day was monstrously huge.
Yeah.
That was really big, but Starship is bigger than that.
Yeah.
Starship, I mean, look, Tesla makes Earth better, really important. Starship gets us off the planet. It's a game changer. It's really SpaceX turns science fiction into reality.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. And not only science fiction in terms of off the planet, but I've always been super impressed with this idea of spot-to-spot transportation by rocket.
And Starlink also. Starlink is a really big
Starlink.
deal.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So these are and Starship enables a much bigger expansion of much larger Starlink satellites that really makes the network stronger. And the point-to-point, I don't know how many people are really going to want to take that ride, but it has the potential to really make the Earth much smaller. I also think boring company tunnels will make the Earth smaller, but that's a longer conversation. But right. I think Starship orbital launch, there's rumors it's going to be on the 17th. If it's on the 17th, I won't be able to make it there. Oh. If all goes well, on the 19th, I'm going to start driving to Texas, get there by the 20th, and hopefully launches the 20th or 21st, and I get to see it. If I don't get to see it, I'm going to see Falcon Heavy on the 18th.
There you go.
The Falcon Heavy launch on the 18th, and then the next morning I'm going to start driving.
There you go. All right, cool. All right, so let's talk about earnings day, though. We even though you don't think it's going to be that important, I happen to think that the next one will be the killer, and maybe that'll come out of our conversation here. But this one, I think, has the potential to give us some nuggets that might really answer some of the questions, even long term. So, what is let's start. Do you have an EPS for Wednesday? Do you have?
No.
No, you haven't.
Honestly, I haven't even thought about earnings per share. I think it's probably going to be lower than last quarter. There's this open question. Here's the hard question to answer. I think we're pretty sure that average selling price is down.
Right.
So if average selling price, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure average selling price is down. But we have two things going on. One, we know that they're improving their cost structure, especially with Berlin and Texas. As Berlin and Texas ramp, the cost per vehicle goes down.
Absolutely.
Also, as far as average selling price goes, because they've been ramping Model Y, the distribution of vehicles has shifted from Model 3 to Model Y, and Model Y is more expensive than Model 3. So the average selling price might not have fallen as much as people think.
Exactly.
The most recent price cuts were either towards the end of last quarter or the beginning of this quarter, so they won't play that much of a role. But if they're getting their costs down, right? If they're sorry, there's two things. One is as Giga Texas and Giga Berlin ramp, then they're getting their cost per vehicle down because they're amortizing a bunch of costs over the number of vehicles they produce in the quarter. If you produce more vehicles from that factory in that quarter, then the cost per vehicle goes down. And then a second thing is there's this tax credit. There's the tax credit for selling the vehicle, but there's a tax credit for building batteries and building modules, like $35, $45 a kilowatt hour, that Tesla is going to be getting on the 4680s they produce in Texas and the 4680s they produce in Fremont at Cato Road. And they're getting, I think, half of the credit for what Panasonic produces in the Giga Nevada factory. So I don't know where that factors in, but I think it comes in before earnings per share. So I think it's after gross margin is calculated. I think it might be after EBITDA. So it's towards the bottom of the balance sheet, because that's a tax. And EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. So I think that may come in later. I'm not sure. There's an interesting question. Where do they account for that on the balance sheet? Do they account for it now, or do they wait till the end of the year to account for it? Do they? I think they would. I don't understand accounting, but I would think they would have to say we're provisioning an anticipated benefit of tax credit of this much.
Yes.
And $45 a kilowatt hour, let's say 30, it's probably about $40 a kilowatt hour when you add everything up, taking out discounting for Panasonic share. Call it 30 just for the sake of it. They're doing, let's say they're going to do 100 gigawatt hours this year. That's a significant chunk of money that's going to have an impact on the very bottom line, at least. So we may get it. That's probably like the biggest thing we're going to get a hint of is, are they accounting for that? That's something we haven't seen before.
Right.
So, we've seen the game of like, okay, how much revenue did you have? What was the auto revenue? What was the regulatory credit revenue? What was the energy revenue? What was the cost of the auto revenue? What was the cost of energy revenue? There's some other things in there, but we haven't seen this tax credit before. So I think they are going to account for it, and that's going to be a wake-up call.
Well, if we go back to your first question, I particularly think that the three questions or the three issues that besides the IRA is going to be the average cost per vehicle. So there are so many moving parts there. You've mentioned a couple of them, but I also think there will be some uptick in what people are buying. If the car has come down $10,000 or $5,000 at retail, then it makes it available. Somebody who can afford the next level up might be able to afford the next level up. That would also increase
or they might buy the paint, or they might buy they might buy the paint, or they might buy something else. I think the question we don't know the answer to is the volume of one. There's two parts to the ramping and the reduction in cost in that. One is just as you ramp, your costs go down. Two is for Texas, I think they're up to 2,000 vehicles a week on the 4680 structural pack.
Mm-hmm.
That's supposed to cost less to manufacture.
Right.
Because it's front and rear castings, structural pack, less parts, less processes. It should, in the long run, cost them less to manufacture. Right. Do they have a significantly lower cost per vehicle for structural pack Model Y? This is, if you go to the Tesla website, there's 3 versions of Model Y you can buy now, the long range, the performance, and I think it's just called all-wheel drive.
Right.
And that's the one with the least range. It may be that their cost of producing that vehicle is like $5,000. I think they sell it for $3,000 less. Maybe their cost of producing that vehicle is $5,000 less than the other Model Ys. We don't know.
Yeah.
And we're probably not going to learn that on this call. But if we see that the cost of revenue for auto is down more than anticipated, that's a sign. That might be part of it.
Yeah, that's kind of what that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that if we see that we'll get some hints about what has happened to the average cost of sale, and we'll get some hints about what's happening to the cost of goods. Because there's so many moving parts on the cost of goods, with lithium being down over 50%, with CATL renegotiating battery prices. And
I don't think the lithium cost reduction is going to factor into this quarter, because I think they bought the lithium before the price fell.
Maybe, but maybe not, because it fell so fast that CATL literally has renegotiated weeks ago with Tesla and the other automakers on the full cost of the battery, which had to be partially as a result of the lithium coming down. I think. I'm not sure. Who knows?
Yeah, but there's a lag time between when when the battery contract is agreed and when the product is delivered. I think the lithium prices were still high in Q1. That's a sign for Q2 that those numbers will get better in Q2 for sure. And lithium prices have dropped a lot. And I think when the lithium price is high, I think the lithium might be 5 or 10% of the cost of the vehicle.
Wow.
Just because it's so expensive.
Yeah. So in general, though, of course, commodities have come down so much. So, I mean, that's just a whole nother element. So this number, the average cost of sale, and then the average cost of goods sold, and then the margin that results out of that, those three things, I think we'll get hints. That's why I said I think second quarter will tell us more, that it'll be even more important than first quarter. We'll be able to maybe see what's really happening at that point. But then let me just
cut you off for a second. So what's going to matter second, what was most disappointing about Q1 was that production and deliveries didn't grow very much. Deliveries grew a little bit more, production didn't grow very much. Right. And like Shanghai was holding back, or Shanghai had a week off, or the quarter was like 2 days shorter because of February. Do we see, before we get to Q2 earnings call, do we see significant growth in production and deliveries in Q2?
Oh, that's clear.
That's a big factor. And then the other thing we're going to learn this quarter and next quarter is, are we seeing significant growth in Megapack? Because it's looking like the Lathrop Megapack factory is going to produce about $20 billion a year in revenue when it's fully ramped. Yes. And that's a quarter of last year's revenue. That's pretty significant. And now Shanghai's building one.
Right.
So if that ramps and they're able to get that going, we may be talking about another $40 billion in revenue, not this year, but next year, potentially next year.
And Brad,
maybe not quite 40 billion next year, but that is a big chunk of the future of Tesla. And are we going to see a mega factory in Europe? Are we going to see a mega factory? We need 60 of them.
Yeah, right. Well, a bunch for sure. So Bradford Ferguson is saying that they're currently at 12 a day, which is about 50% of their capacity. So they should be doing a run rate of $10 billion even now. And again, right. That would be something we might see a hint of because of all the bookkeeping baloney and stuff that we don't know when we get to take the actual revenue. Again, it might just be hints, but boy, it would be nice if either in the report or in the conversation afterwards in the earnings call, people are asking, well, what is just straight up tell us what the average margins are going to be long-term on Megapacks. That would be why not? There's no competition, zero competition. So why not just tell the world what
there is basically no, let's just cover that point about there's no competition. There is competition, but it's not really competition. The big distinctions are, one, Megapack is just a much larger product than anybody else offers. It's 4 megawatt hours.
Right.
I think the closest competitors are less than 1 megawatt hour, maybe less than half a megawatt hour. So it's just a much larger device, a much more capable device. And then Tesla's hardware, Tesla's electronics hardware and electronic software, the software that operates it, is just next level up. And they just did some significant change in the software to make it even easier to get up and running and generating revenue and getting it working. So it's surprising that somebody like CATL or LG Chem hasn't really come up with a good large scale battery storage product. I think they will eventually. Yeah. But we'll wait.
Yeah, exactly right. And especially when apparently the cost of the capital allocation requirement for one of these plants is really low. It seems like why wouldn't and again, it might be that these other guys just don't have the electronics. They just don't have the software capability. But I suspect that long term, as the S curve goes up, anybody that's making a decent product is going to be able to sell it.
Well, if you're already making batteries, see, the thing is, when you're making a car, you've got to make motors, you've got to make it move, you've got to make it turn. There's all these things with these battery packs. It's like, there's more to it than that, but it's basically a lot of batteries and then some electronics. There's no moving parts.
Yeah. A couple of fans.
You don't have to get it certified. You don't have to crash test it.
Right.
There's all these things that you have to do with gasoline with cars that you don't have to do with mega packs. So I would just expect that CATL in particular, which is the dominant lithium iron phosphate battery cell provider, I'm surprised that they haven't decided, we can get more margin on our batteries if we sell them ourselves in this form.
So
I think they're just so gangbusters, build more batteries, build more batteries, build more batteries. They don't have time to commit to the engineering of the other side of it.
Right. Okay, so where do you come down on the whole debate, the raging debate about advertising versus lowering price as of today?
Sure. My first inclination is I think Tesla knows its business better than we do. I think that I think that advertising is not the right path. Lowering the price of the vehicles is the right path. I think people who don't understand why don't understand. The problem, I challenge people who say Tesla needs to advertise. All right, well, tell me what's your advertising plan? And they're like, well, Tesla should spend money on advertising. Well, no. Who are they advertising to? What media outlet are they going to? Like, I would say, look, Teslas are expensive cars. Like, they'll say we need to sell more S's and X's, which is totally misunderstanding the company. The S and X are archaic. They're increasing. I own a Model X Plaid, right? I think the Model S is a great car, but they are increasingly irrelevant to the Tesla story.
Yes.
They peaked at 100,000 units a year. They're down around 70,000 units a year now. If you manage to get them up to 200,000 units a year, it would be 1/10%.
Right.
It would be 200,000 a year would end up being 1% of the total 20 million that you're shooting for in 2030. So that's like an afterthought.
Right.
So, trying to sell more models and X's and S's and X's is not the mission of the company. But but like say you were going to try to sell Model S and Model X. Well, maybe you would advertise on golf tournaments, right? To wealthy men, right? That's the demographic for wealthy men. Well, how much does it cost to advertise on golf tournaments? I'm pretty sure it costs a lot. Where are you advertising? What evidence do you have that's going to be effective? And I would just ask people, tell me your plan. How much are you going to spend? What do you expect the results to be? And the results are not, nobody has claimed the results will be they'll sell more cars because they're selling. I mean, if you were saying S and X, okay, you sell 30,000 more cars. How much does that add up to? It's not that big of a deal. But how much is it going to cost? How much are you going to spend on that? And I think people have wildly unrealistic expectations of how much it would cost to do a legitimate ad campaign and how little impact it would actually have.
Yeah. So, of course, I've been in advertising my whole life, advertising and marketing my whole life. And for me, I've always thought that the way to your point, a very, very targeted ad campaign, the Midwest, the flyover states are always way behind on this kind of stuff because the flyover states are also more conservative. For some reason, conservative folks, and I am one, I'm a right winger. Okay. But my conservative friends, for some reason, love oil and apparently love tailpipe emissions. I don't know why that they're not on board with this electrification, but a concentrated effort on Midwestern, where they're hardly selling any vehicles at all compared to the coasts, trying to bring those people into the fold on Model 3 and Model Y. I think that could be effective. As a marketer, that's what I'd be doing. And it'd be it'd be like probably on cable network, with really targeted ads.
Well, let me counter that.
Yeah.
I think you could make the argument that advertising in places that already have a lot of Teslas, now I see the ad and I go outside and I see Teslas in the real world. Mm-hmm. Like, Dave Lee was just talking. He just did an interview with James Dowman. He was saying his neighbor.
Great interview. Yeah.
He said, I see that you have 2 Teslas. How do you get by when you need blah, blah, blah? And Dave's like, well, we can charge at home. And when we go on the road, we charge the superchargers. And people don't understand that it's great. I can almost see the ad campaign could be, hey, do you have a neighbor who has a Tesla? Go ask him about it.
Right. That's a good one. I like it.
This is what the qualities are of the car that we think are going to matter to you. But if you don't trust us, go ask your neighbor who has one.
Right.
And I think that wouldn't be as effective in Iowa as it would be in California or Florida.
Right. No, in Iowa, I'd be fighting FUD. I'd be like putting the ad together that just lays it out, shows it's a performance vehicle, shows it's safe. The number one thing that I didn't realize this. I did some research on this recently. The number one thing that people care about is safety. I was shocked. I'm a Volvo. My other car is a Volvo. We have Tesla and a Volvo. I bought a Volvo, 12 years ago. Why do you buy a Volvo? Well, they're safe. Well, I buy a Volvo because this safe car is also sporty and extremely fast, but it's still got the reputation. Volvo didn't become this huge company because they were safe. They're still a small company. So I was shocked to find out that when they ask people, the number one thing that they're looking for is safety.
Well, what they say in response to a survey and what makes them make their decision is another issue. I think what really makes them make their decision is what's the best vehicle I can afford.
Yeah.
And that's why getting the prices down is big. But I just want to push back on you. I think there's a theory of advertising or sales that you focus your sales on the places that are already working.
It's both. It can be either. But you have now in California and Florida and New York, you have massive brand identification, positive brand identification. So you're not going to, you'd have to spend so much money to improve your brand in those regions, but you wouldn't have to spend as much money to improve your brand identification in the places where right now the people are believing the FUD, or they're still thinking that they want a car that goes vroom vroom instead of a car that goes so I'm not sure. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. And it's been great talking to you.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.